And welcome to RealAg Live, everybody. I'm your host, Shaun Haney. Hope you're having yourself a great Monday. Really appreciate you joining us here this Monday afternoon. We're going to have a lot of fun today. If you have questions or comments for today's guest, all you have to do is enter it in the comment box, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, or even Twitch if you're out there on Twitch. That's kind of for the youngsters in the crowd or the gamers in the crowd. We are streaming on Twitch every day as well. Today's guest is actually focused on canola, but maybe his better claim to fame is the fact that he's the person that brought me into media. My first editor, going back in the day. We'll talk about that maybe near the end of the show. I'm going to bring him in here. It is Jay Whetter, editor of Canola Digest. Hey Jay, how are you?
Hey Shaun, I'm great.
Hey man, great to have you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, hey, it's great to talk to you. Hey, nice mic setup there. You are set up, Jay.
I'm mostly proud of two things: my Canola dinner jacket,
yeah, very nice,
and my lights. If you can see, I'm
look
very
good.
festive today.
Very festive. It actually goes together with the dinner jacket, the Canola dinner jacket.
Yeah.
Oh, great stuff. Hey Jay, we are fresh off of Canola Week. It was virtual this year. Was there anything, as the editor of Canola Digest, you're really tracking everything related to the crop, production, marketing, infrastructure. Did anything stick out for you?
Well, I actually got to be front and center for a couple of parts of it. And one of them was the panel on 4R. So I got to be the host of the panel with two farmers, plus Lyle Cowell, who's an agronomist with Nutrien, and then Mario Tenuta, who's a prof at the University of Manitoba, who specializes in 4R. So that was a really great experience to be able to chat about fertilizer management with those four people. And so we covered the gamut, but a couple of highlights that came out of that were we actually had, I wouldn't call it a debate, but whether we should just scratch broadcasting right off of 4R. Like you can actually, like broadcasting nitrogen, for example, is kind of qualifies for 4R as long as you take measures such as incorporate it right afterwards or use something to prevent losses, like some of those additives. But there was some thought that, well, maybe we should just take it right off of there. So that was a bit of a debate. That wasn't the conclusion that we should remove it, but it was part of our conversation with the panel.
And Jay, is the idea there that it's impossible to fit the right place part of that 4R?
Yeah. So leaving your fertilizer on the surface doesn't really fit the right place theme for 4R, and because it can run off, say if it's something that's prone to running off, or it can denitrify or be lost into the atmosphere pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I did, which was really fun, was a Menti poll, MENTI, just in case anyone else wants to try it. But it really added a nice level of interaction to the event. So we had 650 people or so registered, and with online events, it's pretty easy to try to multitask and do other stuff and listen part of the time. And this Menti allowed us to ask questions directly to all of the participants, and they gave an answer, and it popped up right on the screen instantly as a graph. And so it filled in. So you could answer questions, see it pop up, everybody, like the 200 or so people who participated in that part of the conference. Yeah. So that was really fun. And it was a good learning experience for us on how to make these virtual events a little more interactive.
Okay, what did they say though? What was kind of the consensus? If you tag cloud everything, what would that word cloud look like?
We did do a few word clouds, and so it was like, I could dig into the questions, but the one thing that the highlight that for me wasn't actually a word cloud, but it was just an open-ended question about what do we need? What do we need to discover? Because it was Discovery Forum, in order to do a better job of improving nutrient use efficiency. And what came up time and again, so yes, variable rate came up often, but in terms of a technology that isn't really in widespread use, it would be an instant soil test read. And I know there are meters coming on the market now, or sensors that you can probe it into the field, and it pop, like you can get a reading on a screen while you're out in the field. And then the next step, which is what one of the comments was to feed that right into your variable rate system. So almost like a green seeker,
Yeah,
so it tells you kind of what's happening right now in the soil, and then what you need to apply in those parts of the field. So I thought, well, that's kind of interesting technology that could represent a big leap in terms of nutrient management.
we did a video at Agritechnica with actually a company out of Manitoba called Soil Reader.
Yep.
That their intention was to do this. So they're using no big scientific words here, Jay. They're using spectroscopy. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, that's near infrared spectrometry. Is that, or what? How do you say that, Shaun?
Why did Jay stop?
Well, how did we get into this?
Well, if you brought it up, it's your fault. And so very much that is out front of the disc or out front of the drill, right? You would have this big wheel rolling, taking the readouts, and then analyzing it based on computery nerdy stuff, and then the precision recipe would be written and applied just in time, real time. My understanding is that we have a ways to go. Actually, you know what? Terry Aberhart was doing some trialing of this application. So yeah, that would be super cool. Super cool.
Yeah, and so that's a bit of a stretch goal, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting perspective. Another one that came out quite often was hybrids, and sort of figuring out not only how to breed a hybrid with better nitrogen use efficiency, which is a pretty complex trait. You've probably talked to people about that before, but also just choosing a hybrid that's best suited to your particular soils, which is one of the things that we try to talk about with the Canola Council quite a bit, is not just focusing on yield. Obviously that's important, but choosing hybrids that are best suited to your particular conditions, be it the disease situation. But also, if we could start thinking more about what hybrids are best suited to the available nutrients in the soils, or even the microbial population. I mean, again, this is forward thinking, but it came up often in that Menti poll.
Canola Week is a nerdy event. It is. I had Clint Yerke was on the show here a couple weeks ago, and I had said to Clint, I've been to a couple of them, and there are certain presentations and discussions where, boy, you know what, you have to really focus, and because it'll go over your head, because people are diving into the deep science of the canola crop. And
they often put that stuff, and this is what happened this time, on day 3. So your brain is already
right.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a challenge, you bet.
That is true. Hey, Kara had a question here. I'm going to go up. She says, you always seem to have interesting reads on the go and are able to bring them back to agriculture. What's on the go right now for you? What are some of the headlines you're working on, Jay?
Like personal reads or like headlines?
Well,
I got 2 things on the go.
You go. You answer however you want.
All right, so I'll answer that in 2 ways. This isn't on my list here, Shaun. Are you okay if we go off book
Absolutely.
for a bit?
Jay, there's really no script here, Jay. You have known me for a long time. Come on, dude.
When do we do the dad jokes?
Well, we'll do the Christmas dad jokes at the end. I do have that in my plan. Okay. Yes, at the end.
Okay. So one article, I'm going to scoop myself, but oh well. This is an article that I'm working on for the March Canola Digest. And it's about aerial application. And I'm just kind of getting going on it. So I don't have a full, the article's not written yet, but it's a work in progress. But there's a agronomy outfit in Northeast Saskatchewan that actually hired a company out of Ontario that does application by helicopter. So I said, well, what's the difference between application by helicopter versus application by airplane? And because a helicopter doesn't have the same payload as some of these big aerial applicating airplanes. But the advantage of the helicopter is that it can land right beside the field, fill up, and then go right. So you don't have to go find an airport somewhere and then come back. They can also dodge really odd shaped fields. So right now what's happening is that the helicopters are kind of getting the worst jobs in a way, because they get these odd shaped fields that the planes don't necessarily want to do. And then, so the next step from there is, okay, so we've gone to a little bit more precision when it comes to applications, and the helicopters can do a kind of an on-off. So as you're flying along, if you don't want to spray in a certain area, the helicopters can turn off. Maybe the planes can do that too, but that is one feature that the helicopters can offer. Helicopters, though, are pretty expensive to operate. You need a whole different pilot's license. So the next obvious step there would be to look at drone application. And there's a company at Lacombe that's doing this right now. Maybe there are others, but I would just say, okay, we've been talking about drones for at least a decade. I want to know, can a farmer phone a company and say, I want this field applied by drone. This is what I want. This is how much I want to pay. Can you do it? And we're there. Which is really the simple question that I wanted answered. Now, the quirky thing is, in the U.S., if a herbicide has aerial application on the label, it can be applied with a drone. In Canada, a drone doesn't count as an aircraft yet, although that may be changing, and that only applies to herbicides. Apparently, you can apply fungicides and I don't know what else you might want to apply. Micros, maybe.
Anyway, everybody's got a juice in a barrel that could be applied at some point.
But so now, and so this company out of Lacombe was saying, I mean, we're not doing big acres, but that has a 20-liter tank, so you could do spot spraying. And so the one big potential they see in agriculture is, once you've identified, say, the Group 9 resistant patch of kochia in a field, you could say, okay, here's my 5 acres, problem acres. Out goes the drone, sprays those acres with something that isn't glyphosate, and then that's it. You don't have to hire anyone, or you yourself don't have to go and try to pick and choose around this area. So there are applications right away to put drones into action. Anyway, that's that. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that I'm doing a bit of research on Indigenous farming on the prairies before European contact.
So what year are we talking? What year are we talking?
Oh, so just like, let's say any time before Columbus.
Okay.
So 1491 and earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm obviously, Columbus didn't come to Western Canada, but I'm, being a Western Canadian, I try to think, okay, what happened here? And we don't really have a good idea, except I did an article on an archaeological discovery in southwest Manitoba, in the Melita area, of what's called a bison scapula hoe. HOE. And a scapula is the shoulder blade, and it's shaped like a hoe blade. Like I called it a snorkeling flipper. That's kind of the size and shape of it. And it had this. So this guy was walking along the creek in southwest Manitoba and found one of these on the creek bed, and it had a perfectly good square hole cut in it. And that was a sign that it wasn't just a bone; it was actually a tool. And so the Brandon University researchers went out there and started doing some analysis and doing some digs, and they're kind of just getting going on this. But what makes this site really special, besides being in Western Canada, is that it's in a preserved area, so it's never been farmed. So it's never been farmed by Europeans. So it's never been disturbed in any way. So there's farm sites that have been found along the Missouri River, but then the Missouri River was dammed and those areas were flooded. And then another one they found was around Lockport, just north of Winnipeg. But Lockport has just been in steady construction, because that's where the Winnipeg floodway, the Red River floodway, comes back in at Lockport, and there's a big dam there. It's also a kind of a busy suburb of Winnipeg. But this place in southwest Manitoba is a wide open area. Anyway, so this is just a little tidbit, and then we'll move on. But so I was suggested by some of these researchers to read this book called Buffalo Bird Woman's Garden.
Okay.
And it was so it's written by this an anthropologist who the book was published in 1917, but it was based on interviews that he had with this woman who was born in 1839, and she was passing on farming tips from her grandparents. Anyway, so two things. They talked about corn. So they would plant corn like 3 or 4 feet apart in rows. I was thinking, wow, like, so that idea that corn should be in wide rows, it goes back to
a long time,
like the indigenous people who invented corn. Corn is a North American indigenous crop, and there's a whole huge story on corn. But it grows best on these wide rows. And so the other thing is, she was talking about sunflower seeds, and they would make these kind of meal balls out of sunflower seeds. So they'd pound the seeds into these, so the hunters would use them if they were ever feeling tired. They would eat on these balls of sunflower seed meal. And I was thinking, there's something in sunflower seeds, and because if I'm driving and I feel drowsy at all, I'll eat sunflower seeds, and it really works to keep me alert. And I just thought it was like the action of eating sunflower seeds, like it gives you something to do while you're driving. But then I read this and I think, maybe there's something in sunflower seeds that actually wakes you up, like a natural, well, caffeine's obviously natural, but maybe there's something in there, given this story from Buffalo Bird Woman. Anyway, there you go, Kara. Big long-winded reply. Yes. So Melissa Arcand, I just see this pop up here. Do you mind if I read this?
Yeah,
Shaun,
go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I was actually talking to Jackie Robin, who works in Saskatoon, and I was telling her this same story because it's actually, if you want to read the article, it's posted at sciencewriters.ca. It's in their blog, and you have to go back about 6 or 8 blog entries, but my article is in there if you want to read it.
Cool.
This is about the bison scapula hoe. Anyway, so I was telling Jackie Robin about this, and she says, oh, you should talk to Melissa Arcand at University of Saskatchewan. So I've got Melissa on my to-do list. Lara, so just on the 3 sisters, I did an article for Country Guide sometime earlier in this year on intercropping, and my whole intro paragraph was about the 3 sisters, and how the idea of intercropping is certainly not new. Certainly not new to North America. Anyway.
Yeah, corn, squash, and bean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the corn, obviously a tall crop. Squash provides the ground cover, and the beans actually grow up the corn stalk. So the three crops all work off of each other, and then of course the beans fix nitrogen that helps feed the corn. Okay. So the squash keeps down the weeds, and the other 2 crops work in a symbiotic relationship.
Okay, well, there you go. That is interesting, Jay. What you're reading is way more, probably a little bit more scientific than what I'm reading. So that was good. I appreciate that.
I like talking about books though, so we could get on to what are you reading?
Don't get me started. I am currently reading Ken Follett's prequel to Pillars of the Earth, The Evening and the Morning. It is I'm about page 309, and it's
out of 1,000.
Yeah, they're always about 1,000. This one's a little bit less, about 900. And
okay.
I love them. I've read all 3 in the Pillars of the Earth series. To get to the 4th is pretty good. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, he is a really good writer.
Yeah,
actually, one of his books is about, I think it's Winter something or other, and it's about a pandemic.
Winters of the World is the book after. Is that number 2 in the 20th Century series? I think.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I read that one.
Good stuff. I also just finished a really good book called The Man Who Ran Washington. It was the biography of Jim Baker, who was chief of staff to 2 presidents. He was Secretary of State as well under Herbert Walker Bush, 41. It was a really good book. Anyway, okay, let's get back to it. We had Clint Yerke. We had it back going back about a couple weeks. We had Clint Yerke on, and Clint talked about the yield robbers of 2020. Number 1 was heat, and you recently added to the Canola Encyclopedia some information about heat at flowering time and how that can rob you of yield, which was one of the experiences we had this past year.
Yep. So I was thinking, we've talked in Canola Watch over the years about the effect of hot days and warm nights in combination. And Murray Hartman often brought that up. So Murray, of course, just retired this year, but he was always a valuable part of our conversations. Anyway, Manitoba had a couple of nights in the summer of 2021 that were the overnight low was in the 20s. And there's some days in Edmonton where the highs weren't even in the 20s. So Edmonton, of course, we know is the north of Alberta is an excellent canola growing area. Canola is a cool season crop, grows like gangbusters in that part of Alberta. Manitoba, though, always seems to be sort of underachieving on yield for the amount of inputs that are put in. So I was wondering, okay, well, there's these really warm nights. How much is these hot days and warm nights really a factor? And I'd never had a conversation with anyone about that in all these years that I've been doing canola stuff. Turns out that there's lots of research showing that really any heat when the crop is flowering will affect yield. And the more heat, the more the yield effect. And if it happens in the first 2 weeks of flower, the crop can keep flowering, but it can never recover that lost yield. It can close the gap a little bit, but if conditions are good for the last half of flowering, it flowers and flowers. But if heat strikes in that first 2 weeks of flowering, that yield is gone for good.
So it gets knocked off the optimum yield curve, and it doesn't have any way to reclose that gap.
No, that yield's gone. And so there's a number of researchers, like I said, who have looked into this. And one of them was Malcolm Morrison, and he's with Ag Canada in Ottawa. And he looked at this for a number of different studies over the years. And he had this heat unit effect or heat effect units. So, and his threshold was 29.5 degrees Celsius. So if it goes above that anytime around flowering, you're going to see a yield loss, and it accumulates. So say if you have a day that's 32 degrees Celsius, and then the next day is also 32. So that's 2.5 heat effect units on day one, and then another 2.5. And that 5 can, there's a good table that I've added to the encyclopedia. And I'll just click on it now, Shaun, just for a second. So he says 5 heat stress units can reduce yield by 10-20%. And that's in his studies. Yeah. And that was probably 20 some years ago, around 20 years ago. Newer hybrids are a little bit better, but they're still not perfect. There's been research done in Manitoba showing that if old OPs lost 25%, then hybrids lost 20 of the yield. So I mean, it's better, but still not great.
Owen says he came after flowering in Western Manitoba this year. No flower blasting or blank pods, but early canola had the smallest seed I've ever seen.
So Owen's up at Binscarth, and I mean it's not north because all of Manitoba is south compared to Edmonton. But so I don't know what kind of heat Owen had there at Binscarth, but so he had no flower blasting or blank pods. But the one other thing that I hadn't heard about, and Owen may find this kind of interesting, is that heat can trigger the flower to produce a pod, but the pod is empty. So next time, if you're checking, look at a few of those pods that might have been produced during that heat. Peel them open and see if there are any seeds in there. And then the smallest seed, so the smaller seed, that may have been a factor of the conditions at the end of the season when it was dry.
Couldn't finish.
And so, So what Owen's situation, maybe the heat didn't hurt his yield as much as it might have in other areas. Maybe he ran into issues with the dry finish to the year, which was another big factor too.
John Kowalczyk says, we had very strong canola yields the summer of the BC forest fires. I figured it was from the cooler weather during flowering.
Yeah, could have been, John.
Yeah.
Yeah. That cool weather is. I think we underestimate. In fact, I asked Malcolm Morrison. I said, "Are we that exact question? Are we underestimating the effect that heat has on canola yields?" And he said, "Absolutely."
Well, the heat, and not just in canola, but the heat definitely impacted some of the wheat yields in certain spots of Western Canada. And if you look at the winter wheat yields in Ontario, that was definitely the storyline of the year. That crop, there was huge potential in that crop, and the heat just whacked it in the early part of the summer. Huge disappointment on that Ontario winter wheat
Mm.
crop this year, all due to the heat. So it's
Yeah.
it is a factor. Hey, quick question here from Jim before we move. I want to ask you about this bridge that you wrote about in Canola Digest in a second.
Yeah.
Quickly here, Jim says, whatever happened to the Gencia canola genetics? Hashtag Palliser Triangle.
Yeah. So, of course, Jim, you know that I think it was Viterra had a couple of Gencia canola varieties, and I think okay, this is just my take on it.
Who else's take would it be?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not sure this is exactly what happened,
Okay, I do that all the time too.
but
Okay, go ahead.
but but you know how south west Saskatchewan. Well, we had a bit of a wet period there where moisture situation in that part of Saskatchewan was better than average. Let's put it that way. And so the Gencias were coming on the market right around that time, and but Napus was outperforming it because the moisture situation was favorable. So it might have been a case of just bad timing on the launch of the Gencia canola genetics, because there will be years when they probably are the better choice. I don't know whether they're still available.
I don't either. I was thinking about that as you're talking there. I don't know. I think the merger with CPS kind of derailed some of these projects that were really close to Viterra's heart. Like, they had some big intentions for their canola breeding program and Gencia and things like that. I think after that acquisition, it kind of changed just what was important or what the priorities were. That may be fair or unfair. That's just kind of a perception that I had.
Yeah.
So,
So
go
Jim,
ahead.
just to close on that one, some of this heat research was done on Gencia and Napus and Rapa, all three, and I think Napus was shown to be the worst of the three, which probably isn't really a surprise. But that is included in that encyclopedia section if you want to take a look at it.
If people want to find that encyclopedia section, how do they, is it
Yeah, so
canolaencyclopedia.ca?
yeah, exactly. And then so it's actually plopped into a spot that isn't perfectly ideal, but we didn't really have a place for it. So you go under the plant establishment topic heading,
Okay.
and then look under environmental effects, and it's the very last one. I added it on there. It's called heat of flowering.
Okay, perfect. Okay, recently in Canola Digest, of which you were the editor of, you wrote an interesting story about a bridge, and it's a very, a lot of times when we talk about logistics, we think of the railways and the elevator system, but there's a bridge near the port of Vancouver that is absolutely critical to our exports. Talk about it.
Yeah. So it's a railway bridge, so it fits in with the railway logistics conversation. But it was built in the 60s, and then leading up to the bridge is a tunnel, right basically under the city of Burnaby. It's 3 point some kilometers long, and then you've got a level crossing. So you've got three bottlenecks in a row. Okay, let's go back to why this is significant before I get into these details. So the brand new G3 terminal on north shore of Vancouver Harbor just opened in the past year, or maybe it's just opening. It's just coming on stream. Cargill has a big terminal on the North Shore, and Richardson has its terminal on the North Shore. There's three very important export terminals for Canadian grain on the North Shore of Vancouver Island. They're all fed by a single track bridge that is fed by this single track going through this tunnel. and then blocked by a level crossing where car traffic is trying to dodge and weave around rail traffic. So this is the Port of Vancouver. If you could write, speaking of books, Shaun, you could write a book about the Port of Vancouver and just the expansion it's gone through and the logistical challenges, because that is a sprawling area. So this bridge is just one part of it. But so I was at the Canadian Grains convention. I can't remember the name of it, and that's bad because it used to be the Canola Council of Canada convention. Someone can pop up there what it's supposed to be called.
Canadian Crop Symposium, is that right?
Yeah, not a symposium. It's a CCC thing again, conference maybe.
Okay.
So as part of that, we did a little tour of Vancouver Harbor, and so we went up to this bridge, and someone had kind of mentioned it, and it's one of those things that, it sticks in your head, and you think, I gotta dig into that a little more. So this bridge, I think the key thing that kind of was memorable for me is that our tour guide said that, like, anytime like a pleasure craft sailboat comes along, they'll lift the bridge and then let the sailboat go through, and then the bridge comes back down again. And the full cycle is like half an hour. But the rules are marine traffic takes precedent over anything else. So if you're a sailboat and you're coming on to a bridge that is feeding these 3 big terminals, the train stops while the boat goes in.
No way.
Yeah. So that's the rules of the sea, or whatever it is. So, and this is probably going way back to, because the boats were in use before trains came along, obviously.
Right.
So they say, well, boats, the business is in boats. Trains, you're an add-on. You wait.
Yeah, but
and it seems that's kind of baked into our rules to this day.
That's like one of those, it's always been that way kind of things. But in today's world of a pleasure, like, that doesn't make total sense to me. I would think the train that's hauling a commodity for export, or to go through the port would have some sort of a would take precedent over somebody in a sailboat just looking to get through. Huh, interesting.
Right. So one of the things that are to improve the logistics for this bridge is to find a rule change for that. Because that same bridge is also used by big freighters. Pacific Coast Terminals, which exports a lot of canola oil, it's in Port Moody, which is farther up the inlet. So all those ships have to go under that bridge as well. So the bridge lists for them. Obviously, those have a lot of economic potential behind them. So, there's no problem in giving them a bit of priority. But the funny thing is, those ships actually give the railways a schedule. So they say, okay, we're going to be here at this time. Can you lift the bridge for us, kind of thing?
It lifts on hydraulics?
Whew, you know what? I don't know. It looks quite mechanical. I didn't see it lift in action. And if you look at the cover of the magazine, it kind of shows a picture of it. Hydraulics, or is it like a gear system and a diesel? You know what? It could be.
I'm just asking questions, Jay.
Yeah, don't know.
Some bridge expert out there might be able to weigh in.
Anyway, just that whole story about the fact that this bridge lifts whenever a sailboat comes along, that kind of got me thinking about how much commerce can be held up by these rules, these old rules.
Yeah. Have you ever rode on the train from?
Yeah, I love the train.
Yeah.
I've done the Winnipeg to Vancouver a couple of times.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, it's worth doing. Have you ever done it?
No, I would love to. to.
Yeah, so you're in southern Alberta. So the Rocky Mountaineer is an option, but it's kind of like the elite option, and it's more expensive. Via is expensive enough.
But if you did, I want to hook on with CP or CN and be in the front.
I've never done that. Yeah, I've done the Via, but I want to get dirty with it. Locomotive.
Put on some coveralls and go to work. I don't think the union would probably let that happen, but I would. I would love to. I can. We in Lethbridge we have the high level train bridge, of course, and so I can see the bridge from my house here, and I always think about just the stories of those trains crossing the bridge and headed to the coast, and I think it would be incredible.
Yeah.
Would love to do.
Yeah, so that trip from Edmonton to Vancouver on the Via, it's something worth doing once. I loved it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I promised we would get to this, Jay. You said you had some good Christmas dad jokes you wanted to tell.
Well, good.
Sorry, I meant great. Some great Christmas dad jokes.
Okay. Well, I did a little bit of homework, and there's many out there. But so, what do you call a snowman temper tantrum? How long do you want to wait
I
for me
don't
to
know.
answer?
I don't know. You want to ask the audience? Maybe the audience knows. I don't.
Sure.
Uh,
That one came from Rick Talio earlier today.
a snowman temper tantrum.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jay. What is a snow? What do you call a snowman's temper tantrum?
A meltdown. Is that good?
Wah wah wah. That's pretty good. That's pretty
exactly.
good. That's pretty good. Yeah.
That's slightly better than the groan that I was going to give it.
Yeah.
Okay, so two of them I actually kind of laughed. So that's saying something.
Like you got a little bit of a you also like a little bit of a chuckle, a little bit of a kind of like that. Yeah.
So we can do they must be terrible, Lindsay. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we'll see if Lindsay laughs at either of these two, which made me laugh, sort of. Okay, here we go. Okay. These are on a Christmassy, wintry theme. What did the first snowman say to the second snowman? I don't know about you, but I smell carrots.
What? You even did the tilt back there. You like that one so much you did the tilt back.
That was a tilt back joke.
Hey folks, Jay Whetter's here all week. He's
so I have to give you the one other one that made me laugh, and then we can be done if you want. Okay, so this one isn't really a Christmassy theme. And since we're not going anywhere for Christmas parties, or not much of one, this also doesn't really fit the Christmas party theme. But this one actually made me kind of laugh. A cop stops me and demands that I get out of the car. You're staggering, he says. Well, thank you. You're not bad yourself.
Oh, jeez. You should have called Operation Red Nose. Oh, man. Look at that.
Is that it?
Jay, do you have more?
Oh, I've got so many.
Oh, well,
I wrote down 6.
Well, I need one more Christmas one.
Okay. All right. Well, this one kind of fits the COVID theme. Why did Santa's helper feel sad? He had low elf-esteem.
Jesus. That is a true dad joke right there. Kara says you've won today, by the way.
Okay, one more. So has anybody watched The Queen's Gambit on Netflix?
Oh yeah, I loved it.
It's about chess. Yeah, that was good.
Loved it.
Okay,
It was very good. Yeah.
All right, so this one combines chess and Christmas. What do you call a bunch of chess players bragging about their game in a hotel lobby? Chestnuts boasting in an open foyer.
Oh my God, Jay Whetter. Oh jeepers.
I should have ended on a higher note.
Jim Hale says, "Remember to tip your waitresses, folks."
That's better than anything I just said.
John Kowalczyk says, "Bada boom." Oh man, Lindsay liked the staggering one, so there is that. So, what do you think to finish up here, Jay? What do you think the big headline is going to be for the 2021 crop? A year ahead.
Well, you know what? So Les Henry does his soil moisture map every fall, and it will be in Grain News probably at some point. Sorry, you can't see me. I'm talking behind my mic, but everyone knows it was for a lot of parts of the prairies. It was a dry end to the fall, and so soil moisture isn't where we want it to be right now. I think Les said in an email to me that this is the lowest he's seen in 30 years.
Oh, that bad.
So yeah. So unfortunately, when you ask me what do I see for 2021, that's the first thing I think of as we head into the season, which means we may want to be looking at our whatever we can do to retain what moisture is there. I mean, Western Canadian farmers are pretty good about direct seeding now, a lot of them, and
Yep.
and if there are fields where maybe you've gone away from that, or farms that have gone away from that, maybe this is a year to figure out a way to look at that again. But I mean, markets. We don't really talk about markets in Canola Watch, but Canola Discovery Forum or Canola Week had a few market presentations, and demand for vegetable oil and meal globally is still very strong, and supply is maybe not where we want it. But I'm going to leave that at that, because that's not my forte. But
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. I've had a few farmers, as we talk about, I ask the question every week on the Sirius XM show about, the Farmer Rapid Fire on Thursdays. Have you booked into the 21 crop yet? What are you thinking? Are you looking ahead, or are you staying put, or what's going on? And I've heard, and I think some of these conversations have happened after we've finished the segment. So I'm always trying to find out a little bit more. We only have so much time. And I've had a few tell me that they're being a little bit patient on their 21 selling because of the dry factor. That, and that they see some potential for some continued lift based on the demand that's out there, and based on how dry it is in the prairies. They're playing it kind of patient on their 21 canola marketings, and they're going to kind of wait and see. But I've heard from numerous farmers, I had a great crop last year on 4 to 6 inches of rain. I will not, that will not happen. We've used up all the subsoil. There's no way that's happening in the 21 crop. We need some serious moisture. So that I think the dryness is probably, at least heading into the season, that will be the story I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, lots can change between now and April, May, and hopefully it does.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, Jay, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. We got to have you back.
Anytime.
There's lots of stories we could tell, and more.
Well,
more dad jokes.
When I grew up, I listened to Peter Zosky on the radio. He was a CBC guy.
Yes, he was.
And so he brought in Stuart McLean. Kind of once in a while, and then fairly regularly. And of course, then Stuart McLean became a pretty big part of the CBC programming. But all I'm saying is, you could call me once a month if you want to.
Well, hey, I'm always game, Jay. I'm always game. I love our conversations very, very much, and friendship at that as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
hey,
you betcha,
Jay, really appreciate it.
Thanks. It's my pleasure. Talk to you later.
Okay, everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in today. Really do appreciate it. Tomorrow, we are going to really have a great conversation regarding the clean fuel standard. And this applies to the federal government's federal plan they announced on Friday. Kelvin published a story this morning on what we're hearing from sources on those land use requirements. We're going to kind of look at a bit of an overview from an agricultural perspective, as well as the impact on the energy industry, because that's a big driver of the economic engine here in Canada as well. So we're talking clean fuel standard tomorrow. Biofuels, biodiesel, renewable diesel. It's going to be a pretty informative discussion to get you informed, and you can be able to ask some questions of our expert as well. Make sure you tune in to RealAg Radio on Rural Radio 147 at 4:30 Eastern, 2:30 Mountain today on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. It's Agronomic Monday, and we got some great discussions. Greg Seklick from the Canola Council of Canada, as well as Jeremy Boychin from Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission. And we got a conversation there about 60-inch corn as well, and a bit of a preview of tonight's episode of The Agronomists. And we'll be talking to Brianne Tideman and Andrew Reed from BSF. And we're going to talk about weed resistance. So 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain on this same streaming channel that you're watching right now. So join us. You can also get CCA credits for that, like you can every single week. Thanks a lot, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Live. And enjoy your afternoon.